So welcome to the Vision to Success: How to Develop a Digital Marketing Strategy. Today we're going to go a slightly higher level in terms of our thinking. If any of you have done MBAs, you'll recognise some of this stuff, but it's all the really simple and easy to use tools that actually just, when you think about it, are kind of common sense. But it's a way of thinking that will get you to think outside of the box a little bit, rather than all the stuff you're kind of used to. I want to just sort of help you step above the trees, as we call it, and kind of look down at the wood of the forest, and hopefully see some patterns and things and opportunities to develop business. So very briefly, to those who don't know me, I'm a business and digital coach. I've got an MBA and a chartered ICT professional, also a member of the Institute of Directors. I'm the founder and managing director of Cub. We started that 20 years ago. And as a coach, I've worked with over 500 businesses. Charlie joined me, my daughter, in about 6 years ago. And she's, so I'm just going to mute somebody. And we've developed into an agency. So not only can we give advice, but we can also do it ourselves, do it for you as well. And we're now working with some really interesting global companies with their marketing. So it's been really interesting. Got 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, but please feel free to find me out and send me an invite. I've got a few slots left, but always looking to talk to new people. So, purpose of our group, and hopefully next week or the week after, I've got some exciting news about creating a digital marketing community using a new tool called NetHub, which is going to disrupt LinkedIn and the CRM world. It's still in beta test at the moment, but we've just literally started the build of our part of it, and hopefully in 2-3 weeks' time we'll be able to build a community online. So the purpose, why are we doing this? Well, I'd like to live in a nicer world, and I would like other people too. So it's about helping companies compete. It's just an hour of our time each week, plus a few emails and so forth. And hopefully today will solve your digital marketing problems. We've designed Vision to Success because we recognise people learn in different ways. And so we've got the knowledge, and we'll talk quickly about the book. We've got peer group, which is this group. And let's say it will go into a proper online community so that you can interact. We have got a WhatsApp group temporarily, but that'll be displaced. And then we want to look at mechanisms to help you keep yourselves accountable. And so we've, in terms of services, we've got the free morning workshops that are going to last forever. You can ask any questions and so forth. So if your budget is zero, we can give you some help. For a few pounds, you can buy the online book, Digital Set Drive Sales with Digital Marketing. That's currently in a Kindle format and e-publishing format. It's available on quite a few stores around the world, but we are now looking to get that printed. And we've got a couple of online courses for LinkedIn and social media. So if you want to generate sales through social media, you can, through LinkedIn, then we've got that course for you. And then we've got some fast track program for peer groups. And if you just want plain straight marketing strategy implementation consultancy, we're there for you as well. So we've hopefully got something for every budget, including zero. This is the book. If you go onto Amazon and type in drive sales with digital marketing, we'll come up about third or fourth in the list. It's a 60,000 word book. It's not just a simple ebook. It's taken quite a few years to write, but we recognise that it's a way for people to get at that depth of knowledge. So hopefully that's useful as a resource. So we come on to the main crux of the educational section. There'll be, after this, there'll be questions. So you can ask questions during it, and I'll build in the answers then. And then we'll be using the Menti system, which you'll see at the top here. We'll be so you can watch these slides on the on your phone as well. But when we get to you'll be able to introduce yourselves. So if you've got some text that you've used in Zoom networking and so forth, stick it in there. This will be available on the WhatsApp group, and also people will see it when they watch the recordings, because as you know, as you came in, these sessions are recorded. And then we'll open the floor to any questions. And if I don't know the answer, we'll find out for you, because it's all, every day is a learning day. And so if we don't know the answer and somebody's asking a question, I feel we should. So I'm happy to go and then try and figure out what the answer is. So you may have heard this it's a 4x4 matrix. I quite like 4x4s because it's kind of simplify the world whilst still getting you to think about your position in the world. So one of the
yeah, if he calls back, just come through anyway.
Just yeah, Rachel's on the case with the muting. Okay, so it can be called steep, PESTLE, PEST. It's been around for ages, and it's funny. A few years ago, we paid sort of, when in a more stable environment, say 20 years ago, we didn't really pay that much attention to this. It was oh yeah, let's do a PEST analysis and so forth, and then COVID came along, and yeah, it's the political and the economic and the sort of changes that are happening around us now have quite has had a large impact on us. I mean, you have to look at what Russia's doing. I have no idea what that guy's doing, but the problem is he's doing that stuff and it's impacting on everybody. The stock market, I invest in the stock market, and I'm in cash at the moment because I've just given up for the time being, because I just can't see any kind of trends and so forth, whether either up or down. We've just been through a massive pandemic. You'd expect us to be in a recession. Yeah, we've got a job advert out for a technical person, and we've had no good candidates come through. We've had the usual people just click happy, applying for anything type applications, but no serious applications. And I run peer groups. I've run one this morning, I've run one yesterday, and supply chain issues, shortages that you'd never even think of we're having now. It's quite incredible what's happening. So you need to, under the political, economic, social, and technological factors, what is happening out there that's going to impact you, and then you need to put this out in a spreadsheet or a document, some form of sort of, this is a once a year thing, or if something happens during it. But we've got some massive things that are happening in the economic cycle. Recruitment is a nightmare at the moment. On the supply chain and so forth, and with government, is Boris going to get kicked out or not? Is Russia going to invade or not? These are quite big questions that are hanging us around us, giving us uncertainty. Yet the companies that work in the peer groups, wow, they're all, a lot of them are absolutely stressed out because they're so busy. And then social, hybrid working, it's here to stay, guys. Sort of talking about mental health. As an employer, I've never even thought about mental health 2 years ago, but we're talking about health, well, with the companies I'm working with, talking about health programs. We're looking at putting somebody through the business on a mental health first aider course. This stuff wasn't heard of 5 years ago. So there's all stuff happening socially as well. And I'm kind of thinking that businesses are having to pick up some of the social stuff that used to happen around. So these are things that are all going to impact your business. And why does that matter in marketing wise? Well, with any change, there's a potential for disruption, especially if you can utilize technology. So once a year, generally, I like to do about January, just go through what's happening, doing what's impacting, and looking for those opportunities. And those are the marketing opportunities that come from you. Yes, there are threats, there are always threats, but you should be looking with your opportunity glasses on, your entrepreneurial glasses on. What are the opportunities? What can you disrupt? Or what will your competitors disrupt you with? So that's the PEST analysis. Then there's another guy called Michael Porter, and these are the 5 forces. And he was sort of criticised a little while ago, but I still think this is a fantastic model. Because we've looked at all the opportunities, we've looked at whether you can use technology or a way of working and so forth. And what's happening in your marketplace? Before, most buyers had power over the supplier. Now, we're working with a company trying to get some silicon compound out of China, and we're not holding them to ransom, but they're doing on their terms, and they missed Chinese New Year. So now his order is not until March. The power is definitely with the suppliers at the moment. Hopefully the global supply chains will get working again, and that will then reverse, because normally the buyer has the power. And certainly if you're a small company dealing with a big company, they certainly have the power. So what can you do to mitigate that? We've all heard of the Kodak moment, where Kodak completely missed digital. They did bring out some digital cameras, but they did it so badly. We had a Kodak digital camera, it's rubbish. They completely missed that market, because they thought, well, we've always done this, why should it change? You only have to look at blockbusters and Spotify. Apparently, blockbusters could have bought not Spotify, but the one before that, for a song, and look what happened. So, but it can happen in your own business as well. Where you had a market, it just sort of disappears through either technology or way things happen. Television, talking about BBC license and all that sort of stuff. It's a big thing, because the younger generation don't watch real-time TV. They'll watch Amazon, Disney, Netflix. Now there's a whole range of other services that they prefer to watch, and they can pick and choose. So it's happening across all sectors. So map out, where are your competitors? What are your competitors doing? What are who's got the bargaining power, and can you get control of that? And say, what's your competition doing? And it's not to copy your competition. It's to pinch good ideas from the good competition and decide where you're going to leave, because you'll always have those people who are compete on price, and that is not a great place to be. If you want to be a quality company of choice, you need to be at the quality end. And what are you doing to stop yourself from being dragged down into the price wars? But at the moment, it's whether you've got supply, which will give you a differentiator, and therefore be able to command your position in the market. So the other thing I like people to do when I do sort of workshops is get people to think about, where are their products in the marketplace. What generates cash, what takes away cash. So, for example, when we were building Vision to Success, it soaked up quite a lot of time and cash as we were sort of writing the book, as we were developing these courses, we were testing the courses out. you know, it was, but now we've got it coming. We've now got 30 in the room today, and we had, I think, 59 booked on last night, which is lovely, and you know, hopefully we'll continue to grow that. But it's taken quite a lot of money to get to that point, and it's going to take another 12 months before, you know, we actually as a business start to see anything. But it's the way I believe we need to go in order to disrupt the digital marketing, the marketing sort of consultancy agency market. We've got to do something different, and but that does cost money, and hopefully we will get more work in, which will then cover the money that we've spent on all this, and hopefully it will become a star. Some of our other projects where we've been working, you know, we've honed the processes and so forth, more like cash cows. You know, things we do regularly, month in, month out as an agency, and you know, they don't take much marketing, and so therefore they generate cash. So in every business you'll have, and then the dogs are where you've got a poor market share. You know, you're third or fourth or fifth or whatever in terms of position with the competition. And if you're a small company, that means local. It doesn't mean you've got to compare yourself with the rest of the country, because that would be very depressing. But within your locality, if your product or service doesn't travel that far, then who in your locality is getting the lion's share of the business. And if it's not you and your product is third or fourth behind the main, you know, should you be doing that? Because your efforts need to be focusing on finding new products or services which come in here, driving them so that they become a star. And then once you've got processes refined, got training, you know, really sharp, and you've got the marketing machine running smoothly, then they drop down to being cash cows. And then eventually, you know, that product or service may die away. I mean, we don't buy very many TV valves anymore, and you know, stuff does have a lifespan, and we could talk about that here as well. Is, you know, when you start off, you're dealing with the early adopters, and then you move into the early majority, then late majority, and then laggards. The laggard is somebody who's still buying Nokia 3310s, for example. But everybody has their own preference. You know, I've never queued. I like the iPhones, but I've never queued for them. So I'm an early majority for the iPhone technology. You just got to think, what, you know, sort of what customers are you trying to attract? If you've got a new product and you've got to educate the market, then you'll be looking at you know, quite an educational piece. But again, you know, the disruption. I would never have been able to do any of the stuff that we're doing now prior to COVID. COVID's changed so many things. You know, people go, "Oh, it's a Zoom call." Oh yeah, I know about Zoom calls now. If I'd have said to people, "I'm going to launch a free marketing series using Zoom," I'd have just got laughed at. Prior to COVID, so much has changed, and you know, we talked about going back to normal or whatever, and then there's the new normal, and now there's each sector has to think about how they should be operating with the new way of working, because it ain't going back to back to 2 years ago. So do this as an analysis on your job list. Again, once a year, analyze where are you, so a star is cash neutral. It will, in terms of, it'll take money for advertising, acquiring new customers, but it'll also be growing, so it'll also be bringing in cash. So it'll be neutral. A dog is neutral, but it's also going to waste your time. Question marks take money off you. Cash cows bring money in. Okay. So one of the things I often used to get when I was used to doing the face-to-face workshops is people say, "Oh, I'm going to diversify." It's the worst thing you can do. If you do find that you've either So we work with companies where they've saturated their niche. There is no more, there's nowhere for them to go in terms of, so they've got a choice. Do they develop new markets with the existing product, or do they go into develop new products for an existing market? Now, one of the things that we talked about last week was the buyer persona, really understanding the buyer and so forth. So these days, there's a lot more work involved in actually understanding and talking to your customers. So personally, if I was looking to go outside of selling more, because don't forget, it's a lot easier to sell to the existing customers than is to new customers. But if you've found that you've saturated that niche that you've got, then the next one is to develop a new product or service, because I think that's less risky, because you know your customers, you know what they want. Yes, you're going to be tackling different needs and requirements with the new product, but at least you've got customers you can talk to, or I hope you have. Next one after that is, of course, sort of taking existing products and finding new sectors. So if you're providing telephones for, say, the law sector, you think, well, actually, the medical sectors, we've got multi-practices and things like that. Very similar characteristics, right? Okay, we'll go for that sector next, and then so on. But you've got to learn a new language, because the medical sector talk different language to the legal sector, for example. So there is some work to be done. Once those are embedded, they then become existing products of an existing market, and then you can do the same again. But you've never drifted into the high risk box where you've got a new product into a new market. There's a phrase, stick to your knitting, and it's not about being completely right. We do joinery, windows, that's it. But it's about, right, okay, what can we bolt on that makes a lot of sense to our existing customers, and are there other sectors who've got similar characteristics that would also be, find what we do useful. Okay, so we then, so we talked about our IT company, our telecoms company, and with telecoms, it is good to segment the marketplace. So we've got medical, legal, insurance, customer contact centers, and so forth. Or you might do it on geography. If you're a local business, you might go, right, I've got Manchester sorted out. Should I go for London, or should I go for Birmingham? And how, if we're going to do that, I mean, a lot of Northwest companies do end up working for Southeast companies, because our cost base is a lot lower up here, and there is more availability up here than there is down in the Southeast. And for certain sort of trades and projects and so forth, it doesn't make a difference if they're using a Northwest-based company. So make sure you understand the segments. We talked about the buyer personas, but then the segments is, which area do they share the same characteristics, the same shared buying characteristics? Okay, Matt Miller's on the line from Eco Enabler Group, and who's talking about a thing called an ecosystem. So Matt and I are doing some stuff together about trying to improve the environmental impact of large blue chip companies and helping them meet their CSR. And yeah, you can. Which of those companies are environmentally aware, which are just meeting the minimum, and those that are completely avoiding it altogether. And you would segment certainly those blue chip companies into that, because each of them needs a different message. It's all about, is that segment can you say the same message to that segment and it makes sense to them because you base it on the characteristics. So yes, you can. And then you've got to think, right, okay, where am I going to position my product? Am I going to be, sort of a pallet high, sell it cheap? Am I going to be, quality? Am I going to be M&S and go for the middle ground? Sort of value for money, but quality but value for money. How are you going to position yourself to those companies? How do you want them to perceive you? And a lot of branding agencies will, if you wanted to go for the higher one, you've got to then spend more work on your brand. If you're cheap as chips, then your brand needs to sort of say, yeah, you can get it from us. It's a no-frill service, but you can get it at a lower price. So where are you going to position yourself in the market? And then you've got to decide, so if we go back to Matt's ecosystem and we decide we want to go after that middle ground of those people who are sort of ticking the box, the environmental box, but actually not really doing a lot because they feel they need to do something. So therefore there's going to be some kind of budget. So what are we going to what message are we going to go out to them with? And so that's where you then, in your plan, you've identified the segment you're going after. You've identified where you're going to sit in terms of cheap, sort of middle ground or high end, or any other positioning you decide that you want to be. And then it's then that message, how are we going to tackle it? Okay, so I'm just going to stop the share actually rather than doing it through Menti. It's probably easier for you all to. So has anybody sort of got any questions before we start introducing each other via the system? No, everybody happy? Okay. So what we're going to do now is, if you all get your mobile phones, and we're going to move on from the questions. So Rachel, if you want to sort of get one going, but basically if you go to menti.com and enter the code 942776760, hopefully you've all got your little pictures which you've used in Zoom and so forth. You just want to introduce yourself via the menti.com. And I don't know if on the iPhone, I'm not sure about the Android, but I have a little notes and I'll just copy and paste that into my apps, which is quite a useful way of doing that. There is a bit of a delay sometimes when it comes through. So Rachel's introduced herself, and Rachel helps works with me and Chana, our daughter, to keep the show on the road at TechCo and to do the sales and marketing. Anybody else brave enough? Yeah, Giles. Thanks, Giles. So Giles does some really beautiful. If you search for Cal Gos. If I got the words right, Charles Cosden, Kozdon. On his posts, he's got loads of pictures of beautiful, absolutely beautiful things. I've got Ella who's into accountancy, to develop a CTO with a few startups. Bruna, a business student. Rachel from Puddalicious, if you want some beautiful cakes and beautiful puddings, then Rachel will help you out there. And there's Paul teaching business how to use the courts to carry out their own debt recovery. Well, yeah, there'll be some bit of work for you there. Hello, Jane from KNM, and hi, Rick. Dave, No Fuss, IT sales and marketing. Okay. So you get the idea. So if you come next week, if you make a note of sort of how to introduce yourself, then this will be in the recording, of course, so people will see it. It's just to kind of get you warmed up for the next stage, which is what digital marketing problems are you trying to solve? What are your what are the things that you've got stuck on? Hi, Rachel.
Hi. For me, it's about shifting my direction. So I've got quite a loyal customer base, which is great. But as you know, I want to shift my direction of where my business is going from more cakes to puddings. Yeah. And how do I do that without turning off my loyal customers? How do I sort of bring them on the journey to the change rather than just all of a sudden stop doing cakes and start doing puddings? How do you keep people on board when you're trying to change direction?
So, well, first of all, how are you currently getting your customers?
Social media, predominantly Facebook, some through Instagram, and word of mouth, but predominantly Facebook for me, and it's local at the moment.
Yeah. So, so at the moment you're known for cakes through social and so forth. And you'll have those regular customers buying the cakes from you.
Yeah.
So that the trick then is to start to switch over the social, so you have more posts. You still do the 1 or 2 posts of the cake.
Yeah.
You keep the posts, but you start to develop posts for the puddings, you know, and make it easy for them to do business with you. Find ways to, you know, for them to buy those things with a minimum. I mean, with Facebook, you can have a Facebook shop, and so people can actually place orders and buy things directly from the shop. So that's how I do it. I'd taper it.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
If you don't want to do any more cakes, then you need to taper it down so that get them used to saying, oh, you're the puddings lady rather than the cake lady.
Yeah.
And then build that reputation locally. And you know, flyers, you know, you could put a flyer within the cake box, you know, saying, hey, have you tried our puddings? You know, flyers are incredibly powerful in that respect. Okay, we've now got some questions on yeah, no problem. Actually. Questions on the screen now. So connecting with a relevant audience and keeping attention. So unfortunately, we live in a fairly fast-moving world now, where that you can't keep repeating the same message, and so we, you know, Rachel and the team put together social media plans for any of our customers, and we'd always encourage you guys to put a social media plan together, and to bring in that variety. What we have found is that creativity, I think, is almost the new sort of new skill that's being appreciated more. I know the bulk of our team in Cub is are creative people with very strong creative skills. It's interesting how things have changed. So you know, have a plan and make sure that you're working with somebody creative, whether it's in-house or whether you outsource them. There's plenty of freelancers out there, Fiverr and so forth, if you don't have much budget. But do stuff and talk to your customers. What would they be interested in seeing? So that's how we have to keep up, have to keep that connection with the audience, and it's continually changing. Unfortunately, I can't give you a recipe, because what we were doing now is different from what we were doing 3 months ago. Okay, so the next question is knowing where to start first with paid advertising. So somebody's concentrating on one or spread across various. Currently testing with Google, but looking at Facebook and LinkedIn. Yeah, so we're about to launch a product for a website for somebody, a new disruptive service for law, and we're doing it in a series of stage experiment trials and campaigns. So if your budget's limited, then I would stick to one at a time. So he'd already, the prospective client had already, well, client, because we've already started working with them, had already done Google. So we'll be doing Facebook. In terms of the order, that's Google and Facebook's a difficult one these days. Facebook really used to be really cheap. And so you do, right, okay, if there's not much budget, let's do Facebook. It does depend on the audience as well, of course. I'm assuming here this is, well, it's a bit difficult, you've got LinkedIn as well. So are you business to consumer, are you business to business? If you're business to business, then obviously you probably want to try Google first. If you're selling products, you want to get the free listings using Google Merchant Services, which is part of the Google Shopping. I don't know whether it was a few months ago now, about 6 months ago, they gave to the shopping. So you've got your e-commerce shop, then you've got what's called Google Merchant Services, where your shop sends it all to Google, and then Google goes, right. And what they did was they allowed to go onto the free listings as well as the paid for. So that means you basically you can advertise your products for free. Okay, it won't do as well as the paid, but it does depend on whether you're selling products or services, whether you've got an e-commerce shop or not, and if you're selling business to consumer and business to business. But if you are testing, then one at a time is great, because then what you can then do is look at your free Google Analytics and see what impact that campaigns have. If you've set everything off, you can't see it. So it's an easy way of doing A/B split testing. Okay, so we've got somebody setting off as an independent consultant, raising profile, reaching new customers. Okay, well, first of all, as a consultant, if you're new to any business, I would recommend joining a network. There's BNI, there's Shout in the Northwest here. BNI, Shout. I'm an IOD ambassador, so we're looking at creating mastermind groups so that people can sort of network with each other. There's the FSB, there's a business network, there's a whole plethora of sort of networking. And the point about that is you're probably not likely to win that much business, but what you will do is sharpen up your sales message. We have a lot of people coming to us when they're looking for marketing help and say, okay, what's the sales message? What when you're talking to a customer, what do they, well, I'm new to it. Right, well, that's where network's great, because it's a really friendly place to test your message out. And if you ask, and people are super supportive, especially, the experienced networkers, because they've been there before, and say, what did you think to my message? Is it any good? And they'll go, and they'll give you some honest feedback, which is what you need. You need somebody when you practice your pitch, is somebody going to give you some positive feedback. Once you know your marketing message, then obviously LinkedIn, that's super important if you're going out reaching to businesses. I don't care what everybody says, we do LinkedIn lead gen for people, and if you do it right, it works still. It doesn't work if you pitch, but it does work if you reach for, we talked about the customer pains last week, and if you reach for, talk to their pain, ask them about their problems, generally they will share those problems with you, and that'll give you an opportunity to say, oh, can we have a chat on the phone? Can we have a Zoom call? Whatever. So and the thing about, we talked about buyer persona last week, this becomes really important on LinkedIn, because you're then going to focus on the people who really matter, and you will need Sales Navigator at some point because of the search criteria to really be able to drill down there. So Joe Carney has reached out, and so if anybody is looking for new customers, then ping Joe Carney an email at joe.carney@gmail.com, and you can then have a chat. Always worth talking to people. If somebody is willing to talk to you, have a chat, then you never know, it might end up in something really interesting. Okay, so IT company offering a broad range of services, find it difficult to zero on one area. All right, so just scroll the screen there. So one of the issues with the IT services is which sector. So that's where we're talking about telecoms. We go, right, okay, we're really good at law, really good at medical, really good at whatever. One of the things for IT companies, if you create yourself a matrix of your customers and the service that you supply, because presumably you've got a range of services. You've got the sort of Office 365, you've got the broadband, you've got the data streams that that you might have. You might look after phones, it might be security, might be some kind of applications or whatever. Sort of put those across the top, and then just actually identify what services do the product service customer product service matrix, and you'll be able to identify those customers that you're not already working with. And then what you can then do is maybe I worked with one IT company, and they had about 12 of these things. So right, let's do one each month. Let's promote one aspect each month. And or you could say, right, okay, we actually work with a lot of law people and so forth, or whatever. Let's focus on that sector. Maybe look at doing analysis of who you're working for. Have you got any unique experience that particularly helps a particular sector? And then you can jump on LinkedIn, do the search, and go after all the company owners who are in that sector. So hopefully that gives you support for that. Okay. So somebody says, I'm B2C, I need to reach new customers, probably Facebook advertising. Don't boost, advertise. Unfortunately, the days when we called it organic, where you put something up and then quite a lot of people will read it, are long gone. It's probably, it still works a bit on Instagram, but generally you're into Facebook advertising, and there's a budget to it as well. You probably look at the minimum of £1,000 budget if you're doing anything in any serious sort of volume. Converting leads on LinkedIn. So with the LinkedIn, you need to look at so you get lots of messages saying, hey, I sell this. That's completely wrong. Remember last week we talked about buyer persona. If their pain, what is their pain? Ask them, sort of a bit like a good lawyer. Ask questions you kind of know the answer to. Born Hair Care, hello, I've only managed to get on the meeting Zoom, just kept closing. Can I please have a link? Okay, make sure I don't know what the link is that she's asking for, because she's on the chat. So maybe just stick the link will change each week, unfortunately. The way the Amelia system works is that when we send out a booking, and so we do send out 2 emails now, one the day before and one in the morning. Okay, somebody's asked why ads, not boosts. We found boosts don't work. With ads, you've got far more control of the audience, the message, you can use video and so forth. Boosts don't seem to give the same results. They haven't done for quite some time. Okay. Another question, there will be a recording. This is being recorded, and we're just getting the process speeded up so that the recording should appear pretty much by the Friday. So we've got last week's to put up and this week's to put up. Putting a more personal touch into my digital marketing. So I don't know quite what it's going to relate to, but in terms of email marketing, we found personalization works. We use a thing called Sending Blue, which allows us to put the first name and then the whatever the subject is, and that does increase the open rates. And you can also put it in the subject line as well. So while since we've used MailChimp, well, you certainly should be able to personalize that. just when you do personalize stuff, make sure that you've actually got the data in the database. So cleaning up the data first is really important. Done that, done those. How we construct a shipping and distribution model to transact single order wine purchases from vineyards to northwest-based restaurants. I presume that is NW Northwest. After Brexit and the pandemic, put up costs without needing to buy in bulk. So we ran a food business, Charlie and I, designed to eat, selling gluten-free and dairy-free products, cakes and things. And the food business is incredibly tricky. The single order wine, unless it's really good quality, your shipping costs are going to be quite a sizable proportion. I mean, people like, so I used to buy, the boxes of wine from these various companies, but they ship in crates. You get 6 at a time, so the shipping cost is a small proportion. Problem is that one of the reasons why we stopped Design to Eat is Hermes put up their prices by £1, which completely wrecked our own model. That's going to be quite a tricky one. Although if there are restaurants, they will be buying on a regular basis, and they'll have their markup. I think what I would do is go around and physically walk into a few of them and ask them, is this sort of thing? I mean, one of the things you've got to ask is why, when you say single order wine purchase, do you mean a case of wine, or do you mean one bottle of wine? So there's a few things that you need to sort of pad out there in terms of what that model is going to be looking like. But you need, in terms of the actual overall sort of model, think of the sales that you need, think of what the actual direct costs are. And then when I've been working with e-commerce businesses on their models, distributions is about 10 to 12% of your overall costs. That includes packaging, picking and packaging, the acquisition cost, getting those people. And the thing is, if you're selling to restaurants, they're businesses. So there's a good and they're also publicized. So there's a good chance, actually, you could probably find their addresses, although their email addresses would be generic. And also, you just got to be careful with GDPR when emailing to them, of course. And so you might need to phone and so forth. How are we doing? Hopefully that's answered your question. It was a big question. Hopefully giving you some insights there. Yes, that 1K budget for Facebook ads is per month. We wouldn't do anything less than that for a client. Obviously, if it's for yourself and you're doing it, then please work with far smaller numbers. One of the things we'll cover sort of on these series courses, agile working, and because we've set up so many Facebook ads campaigns, we kind of know what we're going for, so we can go with a bigger budget straight away. But I would always recommend going with a smaller budget that's big enough to sort of kind of test the market, but don't. One of the things you've now got to be careful of, if you don't spend enough, you won't get the right data back. So you've got to, so first of all, think of a budget that you're comfortable with, see what results you get back. And if you get enough data back, people are engaging, people are liking, people are, taking action, then that's fine. You can then ramp it up in order to increase that. But if you find that nothing's happening, it could be that you've not enough budget. But there's no easy way for us to just say, hey, it's because you're not got a budget. I hope that makes sense. In the old days, you could stick 50 quid on something and you get some meaningful results back. Make it time limited, by the way. And if you are doing Facebook ads, please, please, please make sure you've got 2-factor authentication on your Facebook, your personal Facebook user. We've come across a few people where people say, oh, could we carry on and manage our Facebook advertising? And then only before we've been able to pick up the project, they've been hacked because they didn't have 2-factor authentication. Brilliant. William, yes, sounds good. I'd certainly go and actually walk around a few restaurants as well before I started emailing them. You know, where we talked about networking, talking to, you know, in people in networks and so forth. You could just knock on a few, you know, restaurant doors, and you know, I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you, especially if you've got something of interest. Got a last question here. Awareness of what is expected of an enterprise to know what it needs to be to do generally and environmentally and socially considered is determined. Yeah, I think this must be yours, Matt, is it? Yeah, so we're sort of kind of into market research here. What we'd do, we would use LinkedIn to do this, because you need to do it en masse really to have those conversations. The first job will be to identify who owns that pain within the business. It won't be the CEO, you know, on the bottom of his or her list. So we need to find out, and it probably won't be the health and safety guy either. So we need to go back to the buyer persona. Who in the blue chip company or the larger organization has that pain? Who's the responsibility of solving it? Try and figure out how to, you know, exhibitions, conferences can also be a good way. You know, quite a lot of these professional people go to conferences, and that could be a great way. You can usually get quite a cheap table, and that's all you need, and there's some banner stands for a couple of £100, and you're having a conversation. Yeah, because we're still humans. We still need to understand people. We can't just do email, we can't just do Facebook or whatever. We've got to understand, if we understand what their pain is, and hence why we kind of started off last week with the buyer persona. Okay, so just very quickly, what actions are you going to take away from today? Just stick them into Menti so everybody can see what sort of actions people are going to take away from today. Because I'm all into, you know, this action learning. I want, you know, the stuff we've given out, when I know that people are going to crack on. A few people have already in the chat mentioned the things they're going to be doing. Would anybody like to sort of venture out as to what the actions they're going to take away? Okay, yeah, that's good. But don't forget, you don't need to start with a K, 1K. You know, start with some experiments. Start with shorter time frames. So maybe run it for 2 weeks, because everything digital happens really fast. Keep working with you guys. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. Okay. I mean, if your boosts are working, but I would certainly, you know, split that budget between boosts and ads, and just see which is the more effective. It could be that your posts are so amazing that they're getting traction, but I would certainly do that, because it then gives you that focus. Yeah, that's the spin off screen. Looking at the PEST model, great. Social media plan, yeah, that sounds good. Anybody else? Paul's going to look into LinkedIn lead generation. Yeah, let's remember, you're not to pitch. Never pitch on LinkedIn. So never say, I sell X. Always about them. Always about their pain. And then the call to action is, hey, can we have a chat? Because I think I understand what your problem is. Can we have a chat and find out a bit more? Okay, that's good. Be good to see your colleagues. Yeah, targeted marketing, absolutely. Call it rifle shot marketing rather than bookshot. Because rifle shot, you know, sniper, you're going exactly for who you want. It doesn't always work in all businesses, but certainly on business to business, it's the case. Yeah, looking at vertical, yep, so it's using Sales Navigator. Yeah, specific industry sectors. They're very good at the filters now in Sales Navigator. They're not the rubbish in the free version, unfortunately. Okay, we're coming up now to the end, so I'm going to just last slide. Rachel's in the group. If you'd like to email Rachel with your mobile number and name, she will then add you to the WhatsApp group. As I say, I'm hoping in 2 or 3 weeks' time, I'm going to be able to launch a completely new product called NetHub, and it sits between LinkedIn and a CRM. So the data is updated by people on the network, and you can communicate, and we can all share information and so forth. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you very much for all your attention today. It's lovely to see you all, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks very much.